Where I am right now, well, it's a patch of grass. But it wasn't always a patch of grass. There used to be an old building here. It was named Stoughton Hall. But in 2022, it was demolished as part of GW's campus development. While the changes in space are exciting, it's important to know about the places that used to be here, as well as the lives and stories behind them. We spoke with students, residents, and the Foggy Bottom Association to get the story.
GW moved into the Foggy Bottom area in 1912, and first it used a lot of the buildings that were existent, and then, of course, over the century plus since, it's built a lot of new buildings. In the last few years, there have been a couple of buildings that have been demolished. One is where we're standing right here, is the Staunton building, named after one of the early presidents of George Washington University that probably nobody remembers much about. This was built as an apartment. It was a GW student dorm. It was the site of the first computer that was used at a college campus in D.C. And then it was classroom space.
This is all we have left of Staunton Hall. And this was a low-rise building. It had a very human scale to it. It was graceful. It wasn't extraordinary, but you could sense its history when you walked past it, when you looked at other buildings around you.
Staunton Hall wasn't the only place that happened, though. It also happened here, where the Wagaman House used to be.
When it was built, that whole square was mostly row houses. When GW moved in, they bought most of them over time, demolished them. The lady who owned that house refused to sell it, so it stayed in place for a long time. She was actually a copyright typesetter for the Washington Post for many years. But then she passed on, and her son took it over. It was sold to GW, and it was used as the first GW Women's Studies office, actually, and then as the Nashville Center. And then, again, that space, that square will be redeveloped, and it was demolished.
We asked GW students about the demolished historic buildings on campus and the green spaces that now take their place.
I mean, I think as long as it has a use, it's good to keep it around, but if it hasn't been used, even as something like for tours, I think if there's a better use for the space, then I don't know. Don't keep it.
I'm a big fan of having the old style buildings. I obviously think they need to be protected, and when it comes to the modern day wave of architecture and how it kind of seems a little dull, I think the old fashioned is very telling on how we used to behave.
I think we have enough buildings, not enough green space. Even U Yard is there's not that's the only other green space out here besides this little field. So I think it should not be a building.
Just kind of does need more places like these. I don't think demolish every building on campus, but it just definitely just needs more green spaces because it's just really urban here, and I think these very few spaces that exist just need to be protected at least.
I would like it to be green space. I think that whatever they put here, the building won't be that useful. It's a pretty small area anyways.
But Leon doesn't think that these spaces are here to stay.
Well, I think, it's a trade-off. You lose the history, but you get some, usable space that adds to the appeal of the neighborhood, of the area. But again, it's a temporary solution.
Given my knowledge and what I appreciate is to recognize the people who lived in the historic buildings, the structures themselves, possibly the workmanship, people who they were day laborers. They weren't necessarily famous architects. They were built by people who didn't have workman's comp. They were built by people who were barely getting by in a lot of cases. And I think historic preservation isn't just the structure, isn't just the building. The historic preservation is everyone involved in that building.